here with John Einarsen, the founding editor and publisher of the Kyoto Journal. How did you first end up in Japan?
The first time I came to Japan, I was in the Navy. I was in Vietnam, actually. I was on a minesweeper. And we came to Japan to go to firefighting school. And we came up from Guam and we entered Tokyo Bay. And it was a very heavy rain. It was November. It was in November. And there was a very heavy rain, and so we had to go very, very slow. And you could hardly see anything. You know, you could just make out the hills a little bit. But anyway, we docked and we got in. And the next day, I got off duty about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the rain had stopped, but the skies were still quite dark, full of dark clouds. But at that, in the west, the sun had come out. So it kind of covered everything in this golden light, late afternoon, autumn, with the dark sky. And I had gone out the gate and I just started wandering through this little town. And I found this very narrow path up a hill. And I decided to take it. I thought, well, I wonder where this will lead. So it went up and up and up, and I got to the top of the hill, and it was this park. And it was, again, this late November light, dark skies, and I was above this flat ground. And I looked down, and in this flat area, there was a group of Japanese practicing ballroom dancing. They were all in a circle and practicing ballroom dancing. And the whole scene was so magical, so gentle. All of this in, this golden light. And I just remember thinking, what is this place? I have to come back to this place. I have to come back to Japan to find out more about it. So then later, after I graduated, I came on a program to study Japanese art. I came to, the first time I came to Kyoto, I fell in love right away. I was raised in Denver, Colorado. Colorado's the Centennial State. It was founded in 1876. So when I grew up in the suburbs. Everything is new, right? You don't see a lot that's old. So when I came to Kyoto and just started seeing these layers of history, it was something that just was so fascinating.
What was sort of the artistic milieu at the time? What were they teaching in school? What were you studying? And then what did you sort of naturally gravitate towards as your journey in Japanese arts took place?
Okay, so I took a course in Japanese art, and we were studying Buddhist wooden sculpture and temple architecture, and taking lots of field trips to Nara and Kyoto. But Kyoto, the other part of it was that once I got to Kyoto, there were all these expat foreign artists and mostly writers, a lot of writers. There were some artists like Sarah Breyer and Daniel Kelly, Joel Stewart, and it was a kind of very fun and rich scene of all these people, because all these people were here in Kyoto because they were attracted to Japanese aesthetics, Japanese art. They wanted to find out what it was all about. They weren't business people. They were here because they were passionate about seeing things and learning things. And so that was the milieu that Kyoto Journal grew out of. And part of that was just meeting and being able to share all these experiences and all these encounters of Japanese culture, and being able to discuss it with somebody and talk about it and write about it and create things, started creating things. So there was a group of people here that there were Japanese and foreigners that were, I mean, that's grown quite a bit. But in those days, we would often meet and have readings, and from that, Kyoto Journal grew.
How did you eventually gravitate towards photography? I know you may have worked in several artistic mediums at that time, but did you have a moment where one particular aesthetic or your own art and the medium you wanted to pursue really crystallized and came into focus?
I think on my 16th birthday, my grandmother gave me a copy of Not Man Apart. Not Man Apart was a Sierra Club book. They published these huge books on places like the Sierra Nevada, the Cascade Mountains, Baja California, Central Park. They did one on Big Sur called Not Man Apart, and it had the poetry of Robinson Jeffers, and it had the photographs of Edward Weston, Ansel Adams, Minor White, Wynne Bullock. And it was this homage to this place, and it had it had poetry, but it also had essays, and that was a big influence on me.
Yeah.
And it was about a place, but it was all about these responses to this place, of how special this place was. But all these responses were, there were photographic responses and then literary responses. And so that book was a very important book. And in a sense, somebody once asked me about the book I made, Kyoto, The Forest Within a Gate. And that book is kind of a homage to the Sierra Club books, because it's about a place and it contains poetry and it contains writing. And that's the way I conceived it, was kind of like those old Sierra Club books. And the great thing about the Sierra Club books was that they had big coffee table books that were real expensive, but then they came out with these small, they were like this big, and they were so cheap. They were like, $5 or $6 from what I remember. I still have many copies.
Could you give us just a brief introduction to the Kyoto Journal?
So Kyoto Journal was founded in 1987, and again it came from this group of artists and writers that were in Kyoto, and basically the idea was that we just wanted to share our work, and wouldn't a magazine be great? And also the fact that Kyoto is such a special place, there should be an English magazine coming out of this city. There was a magazine before it called Kaleidoscope Kyoto that was more of a town magazine. We were kind of trying to shift it away from being a town magazine and more into arts and culture. And so it became quite popular. It wasn't very good. But after it went bankrupt, there was a lot of people that wanted to start a new magazine. So I spent about a year going and looking for sponsors for a new magazine, an English magazine. And I found one. It was Shokei Harada, and his father, Kampo Harada, is a famous calligrapher and had a huge calligraphy school. And within the calligraphy school, they had a institution called the Heian Bunka Center. And the whole purpose of the Heian Bunka Center was to pass on culture, share culture. So they had a museum that they showed artwork from different places in Asia. They'd have, for example, Buddhist statues from Nepal, or printmaking from India, or different things. And they'd also have a lot of calligraphy shows. And so they saw that their interests aligned with our interests, with creating a magazine that was about culture and would pass on culture. So they became our sponsor, and we were all volunteer. We're still all volunteer. We've been going for 30 years now, and they basically paid for the printing of the magazine and the mailing costs for the magazine. We did have subscriptions. We still do have subscriptions, and that relationship ended in 2010 when Kampo Harada died. We became a digital magazine, and then we're back in print. But the main idea of Kyoto Journal is to share culture. And the focus, we see it as a kind of concentric rings, that the core of the magazine is Kyoto, and then we also feature other articles on Japanese culture and other articles on Asian culture. So it's like Kyoto's at the center, and then Japan and Asia, the rest of Asia.
Is the Kyoto Journal typically been a really good launching point?
There are a lot of artists who are that got to start with us. The main one, I would say, is Mark Keene. Mark Keene, the garden designer and writer. I guess for me, the important point of the journal and what we try to do, the important point is that we try to share what we make. That's the point, is whatever we do, whether it's writing or making photographs, the journal is a platform for sharing work.
Why is that such an important principle to the Kyoto Journal?
We occupy just this very special niche in which, because we're foreigners, we're able to, a lot of people are able to have jobs but also have free time. So there's this kind of situation where maybe it's easier to have a volunteer magazine here than maybe it would be other places.
Has it always been a collaborative process between Japanese staff, English-speaking staff? Which audience would you say it's mostly geared towards?
All the articles are in English, and a lot of the articles are sophisticated, not easy. The Japanese who do read English, that we have a lot of people who are interested in our magazine because of it's talking about Japanese culture in English, so they're quite interested in how the culture is portrayed. There's lots of times where you have to explain things, of course, because maybe there's a Japanese concept, and of course you have to be aware of your readership and what they might know and what they might not know. So, of course, when it comes to the editorial part of it, you have to judge how much you have to explain about something. There's always been the question of why don't you do a bilingual magazine, right? And there are many times in our history where we thought about doing that and tried it a little bit. But to be honest, for an all-volunteer magazine, it's just too logistically impossible, because translation is not easy, and some of the articles are not easy, and you have to have really good translators, and you have to have a lot of time, and really the translator should be paid because it's such a difficult job.
Where is KJ now, and where is it trying to go? What are some of the initiatives or areas that you're really trying to focus on, both now or perhaps more in the future?
When we lost our sponsorship, we became a digital issue. We decided to continue the magazine. So we were digital for about 7 years, and we produced 13 issues that were digital. And then we decided to go back to print. And part of the reason we did that was we had some money donated to us, and we also realized that people don't read digital issues. And the response has been from almost everybody down the line that paper is much better. Because we are doing paper, we have to pay a printer. Digital issues don't cost anything, but a paper issue, we have to pay a printer, we have to pay materials. So we have to raise money. So we're trying to be more sustainable and trying to actually get more advertising, trying to get more donors to actually help support the magazine.